Fatal Attraction. The bathtub scene that became one of the most parodied moments in 1980s cinema was never supposed to happen. Adrian Lyne's 1987 thriller starring Michael Douglas, Glenn Close, and Ann Archer was originally finished with an entirely different ending. In the version Paramount filmed and previewed, Alex Forrest takes her own life by slashing her throat while listening to Madame Butterfly, planting Dan Gallagher's fingerprints on the knife to frame him for her murder. Lyne told Yahoo Movies the last 20 minutes of that cut fell flat with test audiences. They wanted Alex physically confronted on screen, not self-destroyed. Paramount ordered a full reshoot. The replacement is the one everyone knows. Dan strangles Alex in her apartment. Alex shows up in the bathroom holding a knife. Dan appears to drown her in the bathtub, and Alex bursts from the water for one final attack before Beth shoots her dead. Glenn Close fought the change for 2 weeks, defending the Madame Butterfly motif and arguing the character would self-destruct. She only agreed after tense conversations with Michael Douglas and William Hurt. The reshot bathtub finale turned Fatal Attraction into the second highest grossing film of 1987 and reset the template for the entire erotic thriller genre that followed. I Am Legend. Will Smith says it was the only movie of his career where the test audience booed. Francis Lawrence's 2007 adaptation of Richard Matheson's 1954 novel was originally going to end the way the book did, with Robert Neville realizing the Darkseekers are sentient and that he, the man hunting them, is the monster of their world. In the filmed version, the alpha male of the Darkseekers draws a butterfly on the glass of Neville's lab. The drawing matches the butterfly tattoo on the captured female Neville has been experimenting on. Neville finally understands. They are people. He releases the captive, the Darkseekers leave, and Neville drives to Vermont with Anna and Ethan, a changed man. The title of the film lands in that final beat. Neville becomes the monster of someone else's mythology. The test audience would not have it. According to Smith, they said out loud, "No, you're not the monster. We didn't watch this whole movie to figure out that you're the monster." Warner Brothers ordered an emergency reshoot 6 weeks before release. Smith has estimated the cost of the scrapped footage at roughly $8 million. In the theatrical version, Neville hands Anna a vial of the cure, locks her in a coal chute, and detonates a grenade in his lab, dying as a martyr. Sunset Boulevard. Billy Wilder's original ending had Joe Gillis's corpse chatting with other dead bodies in the Los Angeles County morgue, and the test audience burst out laughing. Wilder's 1950 noir starred William Holden and Gloria Swanson. In the original framing device, Joe's body lies in the LA County morgue and speaks to 2 other corpses, a fat man and a young child, each describing how they died, before Joe narrates the entire film as a flashback. The original closing returns to the morgue, with Betty walking in to weep over Joe's body on the slab. Wilder previewed this version in Evanston, Illinois. The moment the corpses began talking to each other, the audience laughed and never recovered. Second and third previews in Poughkeepsie and Great Neck got the same reaction. So Wilder went back, months after principal photography had ended, and shot a replacement opening, the now iconic low-angle shot of Sunset Boulevard, painted on the curb as police converge on the house, and a replacement closing of Joe's waterlogged body being pulled from the swimming pool. He kept the dead narrator voiceover. He only cut the literal corpse conversation. First Blood. Without a test screening rewrite, Rambo would have died on screen in 1982, and there would be no franchise. Ted Kotcheff's adaptation of David Morrell's novel, starring Sylvester Stallone, was originally faithful to the book's tragic ending. After his breakdown speech, Rambo asks Colonel Troutman to kill him. Troutman refuses. Rambo seizes Troutman's pistol and takes his own life on screen. Kotcheff told Yahoo Entertainment the self-inflicted ending was the entire point. He had spent months interviewing Vietnam veterans, many of whom had since died by their own hand, and he intended Rambo's death to honor that real tragedy. The test audience felt differently. They had grown attached to Rambo over the runtime and rejected the original ending outright. Stallone and Kotcheff concluded an 80s action hero ending a film by his own hand would be commercially impossible. They reshot the finale. Troutman talks Rambo down, Rambo surrenders sobbing in his arms, and the police take him away. The original ending was preserved on the special edition DVD. The reshoot directly enabled the rest of the franchise, a series that has earned over $800 million worldwide. Quick note, if you're liking this, I make videos like this often, and a subscribe would really help. Thanks. Little Shop of Horrors. Frank Oz spent roughly $5 million filming an apocalyptic finale where giant plants devour Manhattan, and then watched the test audience turn on him completely. Oz's 1986 musical, starring Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene, had a 23-minute showpiece ending. Audrey 2 devours both Seymour and Audrey, then the plants spawn multiply across New York City. The sequence climaxes with a triumphant Audrey 2 climbing the Statue of Liberty as the song "Don't Feed the Plants" plays over the destruction. That sequence cost roughly $5 million, about 1/5 of the film's $25 million budget. Oz told Collider the test audience went completely silent the moment Audrey died on screen. Oz and screenwriter Howard Ashman rewrote a survival ending where Seymour kills Audrey too with an electrical wire and walks off with Audrey alive. The reshoots cost additional millions. The original apocalyptic footage sat on a shelf for decades, until Oz released the restored director's cut on Blu-ray in 2012. He has said in interview after interview that the original was thematically correct. Seymour made a deal with the devil. He should have paid. Scott Pilgrim. Edgar Wright's original ending had Scott break up with Ramona and go back to Knives, the high schooler. And then the source material's author called and said, "Don't." Wright's 2010 adaptation of Brian Lee O'Malley's graphic novels was filmed before the comics finished publishing. In the version preserved on the DVD, Scott and Ramona break up after Scott defeats Gideon, and Scott walks off with Knives Chow. O'Malley finished the 6th and final volume of the comics during post-production, and his ending had Scott and Ramona together. Test audiences split badly on the Scott and Knives ending. Wright shot a new ending in early 2010, 3 months before release. O'Malley helped write the replacement. Wright called actress Ellen Wong personally before the reshoot, expecting her to be upset about her character's reduced role. She told him she liked the change. Wright has called the Scott and Ramona reshoot his preferred ending ever since. Blade Runner. Harrison Ford deliberately performed the studio-mandated voiceover badly, hoping the producers would hate it enough not to use it. They used it anyway. Ridley Scott's 1982 film, starring Ford, Sean Young, and Rutger Hauer, didn't test well. After mixed previews, Warner Brothers added 2 changes to the US theatrical release. They added a Ford voiceover throughout the film, and they tacked on a happy ending of Deckard and Rachel driving away into a pristine landscape of pine forests. The pine forest aerial footage was lifted from unused outtakes Stanley Kubrick had shot for the opening of The Shining 2 years earlier. The new ending was filmed in March of 1982, after principal photography had wrapped. Production executive Katherine Haber later confirmed in the documentary On the Edge of Blade Runner that Ford gave a deliberately stilted voiceover performance, hoping the producers would scrap it. They kept every line. Ridley Scott eventually got the last word. He removed the voiceover and the forest ending from the 1992 director's cut and again from the 2007 final cut, restoring the bleaker, ambiguous closing on the elevator doors. The final cut also restored the unicorn dream sequence that strongly implies Deckard himself is a replicant. National Lampoon's Vacation. The Griswold family was never supposed to reach Wally World, and the original ending had Clark holding the park's owner at gunpoint in his own backyard. Harold Ramis's 1983 comedy starred Chevy Chase, with John Hughes writing the screenplay. In the original ending, after the BB gun stop, Clark buys a map of celebrity homes, drives to Roy Wally's house, and holds Wally and his executives hostage with the BB gun, forcing them to sing and dance for the Griswold family until police arrive. The Christy Brinkley character is revealed as Wally's daughter. Test audiences enjoyed the film right up until that ending. Then they were furious. The actual Wally World theme park had been the goal of the entire road trip, and it never appeared on screen. Warner Brothers gave the production 4 extra days to shoot a replacement, with Hughes writing the new pages. They filmed it at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Chevy Chase later said on the 20th anniversary DVD commentary that he owns a personal copy of the original ending. Warner Brothers has never released it. Army of Darkness. Sam Raimi's original ending closed the Evil Dead trilogy with Ash waking up in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and Universal hated it so much they made him shoot a brand new finale in a department store. Raimi's 1992 horror comedy was the 3rd Evil Dead film, starring Bruce Campbell as Ash. In the original version, Ash drinks 7 drops of a sleeping potion instead of the 6 he was supposed to take. He oversleeps by centuries, wakes up in a destroyed post-apocalyptic London with his hair grown out and cobwebs covering him, and screams, "I slept too long!" as the credits roll. Universal rejected that ending outright. The film was being marketed as a comedy, and the studio felt the Wasteland finale was too depressing. Test screenings agreed. Raimi shot a replacement 1 month later in a lumber supply store in Malibu, repurposed on screen as the fictional S-Mart. Ash is back in the present, working housewares, when a single deadite he accidentally summoned crashes through the wall. He dispatches it with 1 shotgun blast and 1 one-liner. "Hail to the king, baby!" Both endings have circulated on home video since the mid-1990s. The original Wasteland ending was reinstated for the director's cut, and many Evil Dead fans now consider it the truer finale. World War Z. Paramount paid for 30 to 40 extra minutes of reshoots on World War Z after deciding the entire third act, the part set in Moscow, was unusable. Mark Forster's 2013 zombie film, starring Brad Pitt, was loosely based on the Max Brooks novel. The original ending had Pitt's Jerry Lane and his Israeli soldier ally, Segan, flying from Israel to Moscow, where Lane enlists with the Russian army and spends months clearing zombie hordes from the Moscow metro. When principal photography ended, Paramount and Pitt agreed the Moscow act felt abrupt and incoherent. Screenwriter Damon Lindelof was hired in June of 2012 to rewrite the third act, with reshoots running that September and October. Paramount ultimately shot between 30 and 40 additional minutes of footage to replace the Moscow ending entirely. The replacement is the quieter Cardiff WHO lab sequence, where Lane discovers the camouflage cure by infecting himself with a curable disease. The reshoots pushed the film's total budget to roughly $190 million. Get Out. Jordan Peele's original ending sent Chris to prison for the rest of his life, and producer Sean McKittrick says the test audience reacted like we punched everybody in the gut. Peele's 2017 Blumhouse horror film, starring Daniel Kaluuya, was filmed with a much darker ending. After Chris kills the Armitage family in self-defense, a police cruiser pulls up. A uniformed officer steps out, and Chris is arrested for multiple murders. No one believes his account. The film ends with Chris in a prison interview, having lost any hope of justice. Peele said the original was meant to reflect what he called the sad truth about black men and the American justice system. McKittrick said the test screening was electric, right up until the cop arrived. Then, in his words, the audience was absolutely loving it, and then it was like we punched everybody in the gut. Peele rewrote it so the cruiser at the gate is not the police, but Chris's TSA officer friend Rod, and Chris escapes alive. The original sad truth ending was released as a bonus feature on home video. Peele has said the political climate had shifted enough by release that the country needed a hero. Get Out went on to win the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, an awards push the original ending almost certainly would have prevented. The Descent. This one ends two completely different ways, depending on which country you watched it in, and the director still says only one of them is real. Neil Marshall's 2005 British horror film about an all-female caving expedition stars Shauna MacDonald as Sarah, the lone apparent survivor. In the UK theatrical ending, Sarah crashes her car driving away from the cave, wakes up sitting inside the cave again, and sees her dead friend Juno's ghost appear next to her. The daylight escape was a dying hallucination. Sarah never made it out. The US theatrical ending, released by Lionsgate roughly a year later, cuts the film about 60 seconds earlier. Sarah escapes the cave, sees Juno's ghost in the passenger seat, and the camera holds on her terrified face as she screams. Cut to credits. Lionsgate commissioned that recut after test audiences in North America rejected the original as too bleak. Marshall agreed at the time, but has spent the years since disowning the US cut. He told Empire magazine, "There's only one ending. That's the cave ending." He also argued the US version is barely happier, since Sarah is still hallucinating ghosts after escaping a cave system that killed every other woman she went in with. Lionsgate's 2009 sequel, The Descent Part 2, is set immediately after the US ending, which permanently locks in the studio's version. Marshall didn't direct or produce that sequel. Rogue One. Disney paid Tony Gilroy roughly $5 million to fix Rogue One, and the reshoots produced what is now widely considered the single greatest Star Wars scene of the modern era. Gareth Edwards' 2016 film, the franchise's first standalone spin-off, starred Felicity Jones and Diego Luna. After a rough cut screened poorly, Lucasfilm hired Tony Gilroy, the writer of Michael Clayton and the Bourne franchise, in June of 2016. Reshoots ran roughly 5 weeks that summer, with Gilroy leading post-production. He was credited as a co-writer and reportedly paid roughly $5 million. The ending was substantially restructured. In Edwards' original cut, the lead rebel cell on Scarif survived. The producers and Gilroy ultimately chose the now canonical, tragic ending, where every named hero dies on the beach, transmitting the Death Star plans. And then there is the corridor. The 2-minute Darth Vader hallway scene, with Vader cutting down rebel troopers in a red emergency-lit corridor to retrieve the data tape, was added entirely during reshoots. It is now widely cited as one of the most replayed Star Wars sequences of the streaming era. The credit dispute is messier than the press made it. Edwards has pushed back on the Ghost Director narrative, telling Variety in 2023 that he was on set for the full 5 weeks and personally involved in shooting the Vader scene. What is not disputed is what what came after. Gilroy went on to create Andor, now widely treated as the most prestige-tier Star Wars project to date. Of every reshoot story on this list, this is the one where the change to the ending arguably became the reason the film matters. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing to keep up with all future uploads. Thanks for watching.